Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Matt and I'm back from the St. Louis RPM. The layout made it there and back again in one piece, and it is set back up and back underneath the main layout in its little spot. And I had a great time in St. Louis. It was by far the best meet I've had yet, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. So where do I begin? Well, let's talk about like just packing up and getting ready for St. Louis. As you probably know from my last video, it was kind of a rush to the finish to kind of get everything I wanted to have done for the show. Loading in the back of the car was really simple. This whole thing kind of comes apart really nicely. I had travel cases for my cars this time around, so cars went into the cases, stayed nice and protected, came out of the cases very quickly. That was great. I was a little concerned about details and whether or not that would hold up, moving stuff around and jostling in the back of my car and stuff. Those racks I built for myself in the back of my car holds everything in place nicely. It doesn't let things jostle around. I was concerned, like, like little details like the ties that are glued down and that kind of thing, would they kind of pop off? And no, I mean, everything traveled great, which I'm really, really happy about. The show itself went great. I got set up pretty quickly. I was concerned. Look, I'm an artist, and so that comes with a lot of lack of confidence in yourself and your work. And I'm going to be setting this up at a show in front of guys that have been doing it for decades and decades, and some of the best artists and model railroaders in the hobby, and just concerned about what people would think about what I was bringing. It's an incomplete layout, and I've got things like these little flats representing buildings that'll be there one day. But it turns out, I mean, that's perfectly fine, especially for a show like St. Louis, where the whole idea is to come together in collaboration, take a look at stuff you're working on, talk about ideas and concepts and give people suggestions and that kind of thing. I mean, that's the whole point of the St. Louis RPM. And so a lot of people commented on the track. I think that was a question I got maybe 24 times as I'm displaying this layout is, what kind of track you use, or is this track hand laid? And I take it as a compliment because the track does look good. I mean, if you've seen my previous videos, spent a lot of time weathering the track, painting the track, a lot of time with ballast, and it just goes to show, I mean, this is just Waters track. This is just their simple Cold 83 track system. It's nothing special. But, if you take your time with it and use some interesting weathering techniques, it can end up looking really, really fantastic, to the point where quite a lot of people were asking, is this hand laid? Which is, I think that's a great compliment. I'll tell two quick stories that I think are totally awesome. The first was, I'm sort of set up by the front door, the entrance to the RPM, and so basically everyone has to walk past me in or out of the building whenever they are entering or leaving the RPM. And there was a guy who's leaving. He's kind of walking kind of quickly. He's walking past, and he takes a look at the layout, and he goes, and he walks up to it, and he looks at it, and without looking at the sign that says what it is, he goes, "Is this 26th Street?" I was like, yes. Turns out he was like a lawyer that worked on a case involving 26th Street back in the 70s, and he could recognize just from the mock-up of West Side Highway, the mock-up of the large 26th Street station, the layout of the track plan. He could recognize exactly what it was just from sort of a glance walking past, and he had to stop and take a look at it and tell me his story. Fascinating, awesome guy, fascinating story. Yeah, it was a good compliment that like somebody who's familiar with the space can just from a glance see it and recognize it for what it is. It means I'm on the right track, which is totally awesome. I also met another guy. I don't have the float bridge in yet. It's just this kind of piece of plywood here, and eventually I'm going to model that float bridge and share a picture with you. It is a complicated piece. I mean, you've got a lot of sort of wood support, and you've got a lot of cast iron or metal, brackets that are holding everything together. You've got gearing to like raise and lower things. You've got all sorts of these detailed parts to go along with it. My intention was to, build it out and 3D model those parts for myself to make the float bridge. There's going to be a lot of work and a lot of time. And I met a guy. He comes up, he takes a look at the little picture of the float bridge that I had on the layout, and he pulls out his phone and shows me his float bridge. He's making the same How Truss float bridge, and he has already 3D modeled all the detail parts that go along with that float bridge. And he offered to provide me with those models. And oh man, it's so only at places like the St. Louis RPM can you meet the one other guy in the world who's modeling the same float bridge and who has already done all the hard work of modeling all the 3D pieces that go along with it. And he did a beautiful job of it too. His model is turning out fantastic. I haven't emailed him yet, but I'm about ready to this weekend to reach out and say like, hey, how can I get those parts? Because I'm excited to actually get to building the float bridge for the layout. As far as operations goes, I ran 4 operating sessions over the course of the weekend, 2 on the first day, 2 on the second day, just to show off how ops work on this layout and to really give people an idea that like, hey, just because you don't have a lot of space doesn't mean you can't have a really nice complex operating layout. I think a number of people were surprised that I can get about 2 hours per operating session worth of work out of something like this in this size. And that's the whole point of this layout, is to really show off that you don't need a huge space in order to get something really exciting, interesting operationally, something that is from a scenery or detail perspective, lots of opportunities for some cool stuff there. I wanted to show that small model railroads are exciting and cool. We've talked about it for years. I feel like the idea that like a small layout is the future of model railroading. I feel like that idea has been talked about for years, but then nobody ever gets to see these small layouts. If you go to a layout tour in somebody's home, it's a big layout, right? If you take a look at the magazines, often they're big layouts. And when they do show small layouts, and they do on a fairly regular basis, it can be a little hard to sort of like interpret what that really means. It's a little tricky to wrap your head around. I think seeing it in person, seeing somebody operating it for real in person, is very helpful. And I heard through the grapevine there are at least a couple of guys who saw this layout and finally decided that they're going to get out of the armchair after all these years and build their first model railroad, because what I presented looked good and looked like something they could do in the space they had available, in the time constraints they had for themselves, and that made this whole thing worth it. I mean, the whole point of bringing this layout out to shows is to show people what's possible and to get them inspired to do it for themselves, and to hear that people are going to go out there and try it for themselves is awesome. I'm excited about that. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you everyone for stopping by and checking it out. Thank you for everyone who came by and checked out the layout at the show. It was a lot of fun to share with all of you. Look for new videos in the future as I continue to build this out, add scenery, add buildings, all the good stuff that goes into this layout. And I will see all of you in another video.